The Berlin Conference of 1884 was a sinister scheme by European powers to divide Africa into colonial territories. In this meeting, Germany was granted control over Southwest Africa, present-day Namibia, which was later officially named German Southwest Africa. When the German naval ship SMS Wolf first anchored off the coast of Namibia, the people of the Herero and Nama tribes watched in a mixture of shock and fear as the pale-skinned foreigners disembarked. The German soldiers, with their gleaming weapons, leather boots, and long coats, appeared unfamiliar and ominous to the local inhabitants. "Who are these people?" the young son of Herero Chief Maharero asked his father. "These are the ones our elders warned us about," Maharero responded thoughtfully. Initially, the German authorities attempted to establish their presence through treaties and diplomacy with the local tribes. Agreements were signed with the leaders of the Herero and Nama tribes, but these treaties were riddled with linguistic and legal complexities that the tribal chiefs could not fully comprehend. Gradually, the true face of German colonization began to emerge. Fertile lands were seized, and the German government took over the best agricultural territories, which had long been used by the Herero people for cattle farming. The indigenous population was forcibly displaced to barren regions, while a brutal forced labor system was imposed, compelling local men, women, and even children to work without wages on railroad construction, mining operations, and military camps. New laws dictated that the Herero and Nama people were to sell their cattle at unfair prices, ensuring that German settlers became wealthier. "This was our land, our cattle, our livelihood," a Herero chief protested bitterly. In 1897, German authorities intensified their efforts to encourage European settlement by passing new colonial laws. German farmers and merchants were granted prime lands, water resources, and superior living conditions, while the native tribes were reduced to second-class citizens, treated as mere laborers on their own ancestral lands. Those who dared to oppose German settlers faced severe punishments. Public whippings and hangings became routine. One day, a German soldier brutally assaulted a Herero woman, and when her husband protested, he was publicly hanged from a tree as a warning to others. Such atrocities became more frequent, fueling a growing rage and desperation among the Herero and Nama people. Their anger simmered for years until it finally erupted into a full-scale rebellion in 1904. That year, history in Namibia took a decisive turn. Samuel Maharero, the Herero chief, gathered his warriors and declared war against the German colonial forces. "Enough is enough. This land belonged to our ancestors. We will not allow them to oppress us any longer," Maharero roared. Thousands of Herero fighters, armed with traditional spears and rifles, launched surprise attacks on German settlements. German camps were stormed, colonial outposts were raided, and hundreds of German settlers were killed. Railway lines, which were strategically important for German military operations, were destroyed, cutting off supplies to their forces. In some areas, German troops were ambushed in open fields and wiped out. A few months later, Hendrik Witbooi, the Nama leader, decided that his people could no longer remain passive. "Our brothers are being slaughtered. If we remain silent, we will be next," he thundered as he rallied his warriors. The Nama fighters carried out raids on German military checkpoints, ambushed supply convoys, and captured German officers as hostages to avenge their fallen people. The unexpected ferocity of the rebellion sent shockwaves through the German colonial administration. They had never imagined that the indigenous tribes would rise up with such intensity. Realizing that this was not merely a rebellion but an all-out war, Germany took decisive action. When Kaiser Wilhelm II received news of the uprising, he was infuriated. In Berlin, he slammed his fist on the table and shouted, "How is it possible that a few primitive Africans are killing our German soldiers? Crush them. Destroy them." The Germans were eager to crush the rebellion. The resistance of the Herero and Nama tribes had caused concern in Berlin, and Kaiser Wilhelm II feared that if this uprising was not suppressed with force, it could inspire rebellions in other German colonies as well. Consequently, the German government decided to send a ruthless military leader, General Lothar von Trotha, to Namibia. Von Trotha was notorious for his brutal military strategies. He believed that African resistance could not be subdued through conventional warfare, but had to be eradicated entirely through genocide. When General von Trotha arrived in Namibia with thousands of German soldiers armed with modern weaponry, a wave of fear swept across the region. He had no faith in negotiations or peace agreements. His sole objective was the complete extermination of the Herero and Nama tribes. Upon his arrival, he declared, "The Herero people have been expelled from the German Empire. Every Herero, whether man, woman or child, will be killed unless they surrender their weapons." Even for the rulers in Berlin, this order was shocking, but in the forests, rivers and deserts, these words became death warrants. On the night of August 11, 1904, a decisive battle erupted at Waterberg. The Herero warriors, led by Chief Samuel Herero, were mounted on horses, armed with spears and traditional rifles, ready to fight the German army. However, they were no match for the modern Mauser rifles and howitzer cannons. As the sunlight spread over the battlefield, German artillery unleashed a storm of fire, filling the sky with clouds of smoke and ash. The Herero warriors fought bravely, but they lacked cannons and sufficient ammunition. As the battle intensified and the Herero realized they could fight no longer, they began retreating towards the Kalahari Desert. This was the moment General von Trotha had been waiting for. He ordered his troops to pursue the remaining Herero people and cut off every possible escape route. After the battle, thousands of Herero men, women and children fled into the scorching arid landscapes of the Kalahari Desert. But the German forces showed no mercy. They poisoned all the wells at the desert's edge to ensure that the fleeing people would die of thirst. German cavalry relentlessly pursued the escaping Herero, shooting anyone who collapsed from exhaustion. A Herero mother, weakened by thirst, held her child in her arms and screamed for water, but death surrounded them at every turn. Some Herero people, desperate for survival, drank the blood of their own livestock. Others chewed on dry roots, but the grip of death tightened around them. Thousands perished in the desert from hunger, thirst, and the scorching heat. Among the dead were countless children and women. Those who survived were captured and taken to forced labor camps, established by the German army. The captured Herero and Nama people were transported to German detention centers, but these were, in reality, death camps. The worst of them was Shark Island, an open-air prison where Herero and Nama prisoners were kept in chains. At these camps, the brutality reached unimaginable levels. Prisoners were forced to carry heavy stones all day, and those who showed weakness were whipped. They were given scraps of rotten meat and spoiled potatoes, which often made them sick. Children and the elderly were left to starve. These camps became a clear testament to German colonial cruelty. A German officer stationed at Shark Island once laughed and remarked, "These people are worse than animals, it is better to eliminate them." Some doctors conducted horrific medical experiments on the prisoners, dissecting living human bodies to study the effects of diseases. As the genocide against the Herero peaked, the Nama tribe, under the leadership of Hendrik Witbooi, intensified their resistance against the German army. However, for General von Trotha, this resistance was meaningless, because he had already devised a plan for the complete extermination of the Nama people. In 1905, the German army began inflicting the same atrocities on the Nama that they had committed against the Herero. Thousands were massacred, burned alive, or thrown into rivers to drown. A Nama woman cried out, "We have done nothing. Why are we being slaughtered?" But her pleas were swallowed by the desert wind. By 1908, the German forces had crushed the Herero and Nama uprisings, but the cost was the lives of over 65,000 Herero and 10,000 Nama people. This became the first genocide of the 20th century, setting a precedent for crimes like the Holocaust in the years to come. Decades later, a former German soldier wrote a letter to a friend stating, "What we did there is beyond words. Even today, I hear the screams of the women and children we left to die of hunger and thirst." In war, victory and defeat are often determined by power, but sometimes, history witnesses moments where no one emerges as a winner. Only humanity suffers an irreversible loss. In 2004, as the centenary of the Herero and Nama genocide approached, a historic ceremony was held in Windhoek, the capital of Namibia. Thousands of people gathered, including elders, youth, and community leaders from the Herero and Nama tribes. Every face bore witness to the wounds of history. An elderly Herero man, whose eyes carried the pain of centuries, stepped up to the microphone and, with a trembling voice, said, "Our ancestors faced hunger, thirst, and bullets in these deserts. We lived as strangers on our own land. Now, a century later, will we get justice?" For the first time, the German government issued an official apology for the tragedy. Germany's Minister for Development Aid, Heidemarie Wieczorek-Zuul, was present at the event. She took the stage, paused for a moment, and then spoke. "On behalf of the German government, We express deep regret for the atrocities committed by our colonial forces against your ancestors. We will remember these crimes so that history does not repeat itself." A moment of silence fell over the gathering as people weighed the sincerity of these words. Then, Paramount Chief Kwaima Riruwako of the Herero people took a deep breath, stepped closer to the microphone, and said, "You have apologized, but did you return our lands? Did you restore the rights you took from us? Did you wipe the tears of the thousands of mothers whose children you killed in the deserts?" Apology should come through action, not just words. These words struck like lightning. The people knew that an apology could also be a political maneuver. Germany had expressed regret, but it had not officially recognized the genocide. The Herero and Nama people understood that if Germany formally acknowledged it as genocide, they would not only be entitled to an apology, but also to legal reparations. The years passed, but justice did not come. The generations of the Herero and Nama tribes carried this pain in their hearts as they continued their struggle. Their leaders remained resolute. "Return our lands, give us back the dignity that was stolen from us." Their voices echoed across global platforms. Finally, in 2021, a significant breakthrough occurred. The German government formally acknowledged that the atrocities committed against the Herero and Nama were genocide. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas issued a statement saying, "Germany recognizes that it committed genocide during its colonial rule in Namibia. We are ashamed of this history and fully accept our responsibility." At the same time, the German government announced €1.1 billion in aid, to be provided over 30 years through development programs. On the surface, this seemed like a major step forward, but the reaction in Namibia was mixed. The Herero and Nama communities gathered once again, and their leader, Victor Wingo, expressed outrage, saying, "These €1.1 billion cannot compensate for the blood of our ancestors. This is not the price of genocide. We are not fighting for money, we are fighting for justice." The Herero and Nama people rejected this compensation. They argued that the funds would be spent on government-led development projects, rather than being directly distributed to the descendants of the victims, making it another political maneuver rather than true justice. An elderly Herero man bitterly remarked, "Germany exterminated our generations, stole our cattle, took over our lands, and now wants to silence us with a few coins of charity. This agreement is unacceptable." People in Namibia protested against the deal, raising banners and chanting, "Give us our land, give us our past, give us back the rights you stole." The issue remains controversial to this day. The Herero and Nama people continue their fight for justice. In their eyes, mere recognition of genocide is not enough. True reparations must be made. A Herero woman, whose grandfather perished in the death camps of Shark Island, tearfully said, "We will live forever in history. We will continue to demand justice, and one day, our souls will finally find peace."